Our import on the back of obviously Rihanna, who's from TCA, that couldn't join us tonight just because of some flu-like symptoms. I think she's COVID negative from what she was saying, but anyway, she didn't want to risk it. So thanks for joining us tonight, Colin. Colin's the recruiter.
And the backup.
I pause at recruiter because I lived in this world for the last 15 years, and me and Colin share some very similar interests. So there's a good recruiter story, and there's always a bad recruiter story. You've all got it, I'm sure. Colin's definitely one of the good guys out there. So we're very fortunate to have you here today, Colin. But going back to the guys that we had on the panel earlier, ATS System, Michael and the team, they're all about talent attraction. You're all about finding the talent. Last 2 years, we've probably seen the toughest market conditions for finding talent. Last year, every company was getting rid of people, didn't want to hire. This year, every company's hiring not enough people to hire. How's your organisation facing those challenges as a recruitment organisation?
I'll be honest, it's actually been quite interesting, and it comes down to some of the insights that I've actually also sourced from EY, from McKinsey, and from Boston Consulting Group around what have been some of the changes. In terms of finding talent, I actually don't think it's been that difficult. What I found interesting is how companies are now going about doing it. And I'll give everyone an example. Last year, Taiwan was the global leader in handling COVID. They didn't use lockdown whatsoever. In Asia Pacific, there were several other examples. Hong Kong did extremely well. Singapore did extremely well. South Korea did extremely well. In America, it was Texas and Florida. UAE did very well. Berlin did very well. And these economies were very richly rewarded with a ton of global companies now looking at setting up and investing in them. So whereas I previously would have just been recruiting in Australia, now I'm being asked by both Australian companies as well as Israeli tech startups and US tech startups, can you help us to enter new markets? And that with itself comes a series of unique challenges. Now, I have to say, one of the most brilliant experiences of working as a partner to Deel is it taught me what I would describe to be the gold standard playbook for a company entering a new market. And that is start with a leader which understands sales, partnerships, marketing, as well as PR. Because once you can get the four of those in place, it becomes a lot easier to grow. So whilst the last 2 years have been challenging in a sense, it's also presented some tremendous opportunities for global expansion, which is also how I kicked off my relationship with Deel, who I love beyond words, and I think they're an absolutely amazing company. So there's certainly been challenges, but some of the opportunities have been incredible, and I don't think that there's ever been an opportunity or a time to start thinking global.
So is that group's an organisation that you founded 8-9 years ago and been very successful working within the Australian marketplace? When did it change for you guys as owners and directors of the company to start thinking more global with your talent attraction and supporting your companies in that approach to global?
Yeah.
When did that happen?
So I would say that it started about 7 years ago with the realization that Singapore is probably the tech hub for about 70% of APAC tech businesses. Hong Kong, especially for financial technology. Sydney probably gets more than Melbourne, but I'd definitely say it's when we started going through lockdowns that, as a result of necessity, that we started taking much more of a global view and then just following global trends around who was doing it well and who's being very, very richly rewarded for it. So in the last 2 years, we've gone global as opposed to just focusing on the Australian marketplace.
So as that group's business model has been going global, any company comes to you and talks to you about hiring in all different jurisdictions, you can now offer some talent attraction support, but also now with the partnership deal, you can help them onboard and payroll them as well.
Correct. Yeah, correct. It's an amazing value proposition. I'm an advisor to Stone and Chalk, so I love being involved with an Australian tech startup ecosystem. I think there's some amazing companies that have been launched from here. One of the challenges that I've seen, at least that Australian companies have in their mind, is they just don't know how to do it, which is why I commend the job that you do. I think Austrade is an incredible organization. But we've been able to package that up for Australian companies. That we work with Austrade, we work with Invest Victoria, Global Victoria, the Treasury of New South Wales. This is how you do it. This is the government support that you can leverage. And this is what my cumulative experience has taught me around the gold standard risk minimization approach for an Australian tech company to scale globally, as well as an Israeli or an American company to enter the Asia Pacific market.
Sounds like you should be working for us.
Sounds like I should be.
You're hired.
You can take the recruiter out of recruitment, but you can't take it out.
It's inspiring to hear that. I mean, it's from a business owner's perspective, and again, I've lived in recruitment land and I've faced the challenges obviously you've faced. But I always had a think local, act global approach to the way I was thinking to support my clients, and I suppose now you've taken on that approach with your organisation. Let's come back to the great resignation, insecure workers, all these headlines that we talked about earlier, Shannon talked about earlier. You're in the recruitment game, you're in the weeds. Companies are coming to you. There's senior leaders in this business say that are looking to hire, desperate to hire people. How are you helping them solve those problems?
With some companies, with all companies, you need to coach them. You need to tell them what you're seeing. You need to tell them the global trends. And in many circumstances, you need to be able to guide them to levels of change. For example, if a company 5 years ago, nobody offered remote work. Now, you don't really have a chance of attracting talent if you don't offer some element of remote work. 5 years ago, you and I would have seen this. We would have thought that we need to build a recruitment business just in Melbourne. And then as a next step, we would expand to Sydney. You don't need to do that anymore. With the advent of Zoom and various productivity tools such as Asana, Trello, or Monday.com, it's never been easier to actually take on a global model, but do that right from the get-go. That's what I've seen.
That's amazing. I mean, it really is amazing to think that you can set up a company in Australia, New Zealand, and overnight tap into that global marketplace where there's either talent to help you scale and grow, or commercial markets to help you set up new supply chains. So this is the new world we are living in. Guys, there's some really intelligent people in this room, and I'm sure you've all got some potential questions to ask. So I might just hand over to anybody here if you feel like asking a question to the panelists. Is there anybody here?
So Colin, I mean, there's a couple of problems that we're solving here. One is, how do I engage people as an organisation that's trying to grow? I'm looking for talent overseas. If I'm an Australian organisation, I go to you guys. But then you'll be conservative in terms of who you recommend. But you'll say that there's a range of organisations that can help you. So Shannon's sitting here saying, okay, we can help you in terms of the compliance area. How do I find those people? Isn't it like there's a chain of events here? I need to find them, I need to source them. Once I've sourced them, I can engage them.
Yeah.
And we're hoping people like Australia will say, this is the sort of organisations that you can rely on.
Yeah.
Is that true? And how do I find someone in Eastern Europe? I know the labour arbitrage is really attractive.
Yeah.
But how do I go and find that person? Do I look at some local job boards?
Yeah.
Do I organise relationships with people like yourself? And then do you bring me into a relationship with you that says, yeah, we can handle that now? So how does that all work? And is that just an ecosystem that's starting to build?
Without pitching my services, you haven't spoken to the only member of the panel which actually speaks Russian as a second language.
Okay, let's take Russian out of the equation for now. Including Ukraine.
Look, let me give you an example if you're looking for a leader in that region. The playbook to follow if you're an Australian tech startup or just a global tech startup is you look at a market, whether it be Ukraine or a Romania, which has now got a very highly developed tech sector as a result of UiPath. And what you need to find as a gold standard is somebody who's done this for a tech startup before. You need to find that tech startup launch experience. There's actually an entire profession now called the launch manager or an expansion manager that has experience across those 4 skill sets that I mentioned before: sales, partnerships, marketing, and PR. That's what you need to look for. If you work with a recruiter, it will probably make it easier, although that was never my intent. But something else which I wanted to mention, and it's interesting that you mentioned Eastern Europe. I openly advise my clients, if you're looking at hiring technical staff, look at Eastern Europe. In Ukraine, you have some of the most brilliant data scientists on the planet that are paid at pigeons compared to here, but you're getting someone who is a bona fide genius with their 12 degrees, not 12 degrees, but as an example, and they learn English from high school. I still recommend using some sort of a localization partner, whether it be an agency or some type of partner to at least help you vet, particularly if there is that language issue. But the value chain is, speaking with an Austrade, they're absolutely brilliant. Deel will also assist you in terms of bringing that person on board. And just so you know, one of the major Australian banks has done exactly the same. when they could not find artificial intelligence developers here in Australia, they hired them in the Ukraine, and once the borders are going to be opening up and you can bring people over, then they can get them over. But
do they want to get them over? Because you lose the labour arbitrage there, right? So is this an ecosystem that's starting to build, and is this why we're all excited about it? Is because you can pay these people far more than they would actually get paid domestically, right? But they still have the luxury of living within their own country and enjoying everything. They don't need to move their family here to enjoy those sorts of things, but everyone wins. Is that what we're looking at here?
Well, it's giving people the option. So here's the thing. If you were to hire someone to work essentially as an island, as being the sole person in a region, something that people find quite attractive is to then have the option that if I did want to move across from a Russia or a Belarus, to have the option of going into Australia. Most people don't end up taking it because they've got their roots bedded down there. But it's just like offering remote work. When companies do it, you're richly rewarded by more talent coming across and saying yes. By giving people the option that, hey, if you decide that Ukrainian food sucks, which it does, I'm Ukrainian half, so I can say that, then here's a pathway which you can do it. But honestly, it's the way the world is going, and as another shameless plug, these guys are very instrumental in actually causing that.
That's cool.
I think there's another element to that, Richard, which I'm starting to do a lot of research on myself, which is what does remote work look like for every organisation? And if you jump on LinkedIn and just go remote jobs worldwide, there's about 844,000 jobs currently listed on LinkedIn, which tells you companies are thinking remote first when they're hitting job ad. I want to advertise a job in a remote first world. But to candidates that are applying for these jobs, what does that actually mean? Does it mean I'm working at the beaches of northern Sydney? Does it mean I'm working in regional Victoria? Or does it mean I'm working in Ukraine? So I think until companies really explain on the job ad what remote first actually works means to candidates, then we're sort of in this sort of early phase of what does remote first work mean. And I think there's another layer to that, which is we've got a wonderful person here that's worked in international mobility. International mobility is something I never really heard of. And EY and PwC and all these organisations make billions of dollars on providing advice for companies to look at moving people from one place to the next. But what we're starting to see is tech and innovation start to think about international mobility as a first hire just as much as the sales and marketing commercial teams, because they are thinking global from day one. So international mobility is starting to become a role. We're starting to see companies that we're talking to saying, hey, we've got these people in our business that are helping move people and also their pets from country to country, because we're now thinking remote first to everything we're doing. So that's sort of my view on it at the moment. We're still very early.
Yeah.
Brad.
Shannon, Deel's been in Australia for how long?
5 months.
5 months.
5 months, yeah.
In the last 5 months, you said you've signed up 100 customers. Like, what's the best story you've heard out of those 100?
That's a good question.
Like
So,
financial return sort of thing.
financial return?
Yeah.
If you're going to an ROI on hiring an employer of record versus setting up an entity, it's a difficult one because each country is different. The amount of time taken to set up an entity is taken into account, the cost of it. I'd say, over the past week or so, what's been great is we've signed up the fastest e-bike company in the world, fastest growing e-bike company in Australia.
Sorry, who's that?
Zumo.
Okay.
The fastest non-alcoholic beverage company. Some of you tonight have drank some of their drinks, Liars, valued at $500 million in 2.5 years. And Mycelium Ventures as well. Amazing companies. And also SwiftX, the largest cryptocurrency exchange in Australia. So I think whilst you can't do an ROI on, setting up an entity versus hiring by EOR, I think those are success stories and a credit to what we're doing here at Deel in Australia. It is a difficult time and uncertain period, and companies are trying to navigate through a world where the future is unknown and unclear.
Yeah.
And we provide them with a simple solution to scale into new markets quickly. Yeah.
Sorry, so you gave those 3 companies as an example.
Yeah.
Why do they want to use you guys?
A few different reasons. I think because first we provide employer of record on a platform, so companies can hire full-time employees anywhere in the world within minutes on Deel.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is a part of the brief has been for some of these companies a global payroll stack that consolidates. Because when a company expands around the world, typically they use vendor A in country A, vendor B in country B, vendor C. What that means, different commercial models, different points of contact, different time zones to deal with. And they're very much searching for a solution that will consolidate the stack. And whilst we don't have it in place right now, we're very excited about the launch of our global payroll solution that's coming in the future. Who knows when it's going to launch? We've been told it's Q1 next year. It could be later than that. But coming from an international payments background, I know how complex payment ecosystems can be around the world. So I think those are the reasons. The other reason is we're available. What I mean by that is some of the guys in my team spent countless hours working with the likes of Wise, the likes of Morse Micro, 10, 12 o'clock at night. And that is value that you're delivering before a company embarks on their international hiring plan. Wise, for example, recently went through a $90 million funding round. Okay? They're very much super scale mode right now. And we caught them 3 months ago. And over the 3-month period, we've been able to deliver value of being up late at night, responding to questions or queries within 30 minutes. And over that period, we were able to, to win the RFP and to be their preferred partner as they scale globally. So I think there's a combination of factors here.
There's another element to that. We had a meeting with the CEO of Flyers, fascinating guy, involved in a number of different businesses, but his approach to his business was, and I asked him the question, I said, hey, any non-alcoholic beverage company will normally sell to a carbon-united breweries or something like that to get scale. That's how those businesses scale. And he said, no, we're going to open our business up in 120 countries. We're going to run it ourselves. We give them that option to be able to create that, retain margin, move into new markets, go global overnight. And the way that he talked about setting up a fully distributed organization, that was his first thought. He didn't think any other way of doing it. So I think, when businesses get to a certain point in local markets, Australia, New Zealand, and then somebody comes in and says, oh, I'm going to buy that and take it global. Founders get caught up in the money. This guy wants to run his business from a global perspective. He wants to take it to the world. And you can't take that away from a founder, can you?
No, absolutely. So I've just got one more question. Sorry, guys. I don't mean to monopolize this. So you've got, I've had to set up a business in the US before. Do you do different states? Do you cater to the different states' regulations within the US and other countries for that?
Yeah, look, the interesting thing about the US is every state is different.
Yeah.
So we've had situations where a company will scale into California, for example, set up the entity there, but then want to hire someone from Arizona. The labor law in Arizona is different. The good thing about that, we're established in Delaware. We have coverage across all US states. Canada's the same. New South Wales and Australia is the same. Each state in Australia has its own labor law, has its own mandatory costs that are required by law. We are compliant across all states in the US, Canada.
All 50.
All 50.
Okay.
So this allows a company to scale seamlessly into a country. They might set up shop in the US, they might set up shop in California. They want to engage talents across the US, New York, wherever it might be. We have the infrastructure for them to be able to do that.
Excellent. Thanks.
Thanks for your questions, Brad. Anything
Thanks,
else
Brad.
anybody wants to ask a question around? Yes.
I was just got more of a question of opinion. Like we've gone through an experience where we have 3 entities in 3 different countries: Ukraine, US, and Australia.
Yeah.
And that's allowed us to. We've struggled to hire people in Australia, for example, because the skills just aren't there. So it's allowed us to expand the US and Ukraine, but even then, like the skills aren't in those countries. So I think, like, what's your thoughts around the difference between, I guess, trying to hire where you've got like this group of people versus having sort of this lone agent because the skill shortage exists and you can't find them elsewhere. Like, that's one thing we've struggled with is, how do you keep them connected to the company, or do you go for skills and so you kind of you weigh up 2 candidates. One might be more skilled, but the other one lives 5 minutes down the road from another employee.
Interesting one.
That's a good question.
It's a really interesting one because I think, coming back to Richard's question, we're in this sort of, new world of, access to talent. There's always been a really challenging situation between said business. I want to hire a salesperson. I'll go to a recruitment company, they'll have a process they run, I've got to wait for that process. They'll throw me a few people and I don't like any of them, and I'll try to do it myself. So the skills gap has always been there. The talent shortage has always been there. It's just been highlighted more so because of COVID, because of the border closures, things like that. So I think what we're trying to do at Deel is try and create a connected economy across both the payroll side of things. Okay, we can help you payroll them. But furthermore, how do we create a connected talent community? So you as a company that goes, okay, I want to go to Ukraine on advice from Austrade or New Zealand Trade Enterprise, whatever they say, or EY, you can come to us first and we can say, okay, here's what salaries look like in that country. Here's what you need to do to be able to hire them. And here's the talent community to connect and find those people as well. And I think that's the missing piece that recruitment agencies, BPOs, outsourcing organisations, our own networks are really struggling to try and bind together at the moment. Somebody solves that, we'll make sure that money. LinkedIn's done a great job creating a global community of talent, 790 million plus people, but it's unvetted talent. It's unverified. People have created their own brands, their own profiles. Half of it's not what they do versus what they do. So I think somebody needs to create something that can vet all of that global talent into a consumable sort of access point for businesses. That's my thoughts on it. Anybody else?
Yeah, look, I think it depends on the nature of the role. The reality is that tenure is shrinking measurably each year. So if you want to hire an SDR, for instance, what's the tenure? 17 months or so?
Yeah, I'd say
If you're up
8 months. 12 months for Betty.
Yes. So, you've got to have a realistic expectation of, even if you hire somebody locally, what's the chance of them being around in 12, 24 months or something like that? Now, then that opens up the question of culture and how you value people. And that needs to be constant no matter where you are. Because if people are working remotely in Broken Hill or Boston, they're remote. So it really falls to the company to make sure that the culture of engagement of its staff and the way they value the staff, the way they measure the staff, the way they give people the ability to contribute to the vision of the organisation, that's not a geography thing. So
I think companies need to be comfortable that tenure is not the holy grail of the organisation. Be comfortable that people want to work in projects now. Young people coming through, they don't want to be tied to a corporation, like a linear career path, start here, grow myself to wherever I might get to in the next 15 years. I mean, that's what I grew up with, because that's what I was trained to do. But younger people think about their careers as projects. So companies need to accept that, hey, an SDR, if I'm getting for 8 months, I need to develop them or hand them over and get somebody else, and create structures around churn that support their business.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I've been on this journey myself. We started Deel 5 months ago here. I was the first employee. I hired everyone remotely. We hadn't met. I met some of the team for the first time today. And I think culture is very much of being connected to the overarching vision, and being connected to the team is very much top down but bottom up. Everyone contributes, and every day, we catch up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and every day at 4:30 in the afternoon we catch up again. And I think that being available for your team, letting them know that you've got their best interests at heart, is super critical. Location doesn't matter. We're living in this remote world where people are hiring people from all over the place. It's a culture thing. You've got to take a look at what the culture is for your organisation and control that. Top down, bottom up. Everyone contributes. And as a follow-up to that, tomorrow morning we're going to meet at WeWork in Sydney. We're doing a culture session. Okay, I've met some of these guys for the first time, but I want everyone to contribute to the culture because it's a collective effort. So that's my perspective.
Can I say something? I think it's undeniable, though, that the environment with which we lived for the last 2 years has expedited the principles of remote working, which is why it's about timing. And I think with respect to Deel, the timing was tremendous, because they had a runway, and then we had a global pandemic upon which technology, both the sophistication of the technology and the necessity to adopt that technology right across the world, has transformed our principles about what it means to actually remote work. Right? We've had 2 years of the necessity to Teams, to Zoom, and everything else. So top down, bottom up, 100% strong management philosophies, but the principles of doing that on a remote environment, people are no longer scared of hiring people in the Ukraine.
That's right.
Right?
No.
They're saying, I've been doing this for 2 years, so why can't I now open up the globe to the talent pool?
Mm.
I think that's the really exciting principle.
Mm. Mm.
Just on the back of that, I wanted to ask, Austrade, is your business sort of approach changing as well in adaptation to that from Australian businesses out globally?
Look, I mean, we're not going to tell you which country to hire somebody from.
No, that's
It doesn't matter.
but that's the point. You've got offices around the world.
Yeah, 80 offices
Yeah.
globally. So, sorry, 80 countries, I should say, not 80 offices.
Yeah.
So
So does that change the business model that you've been doing, or are you reviewing a business model as well? You mentioned 120 country scale out. How would Austrade traditionally have handled that? You would have been going, okay, we're going to these 80, that's what we can deal with. Yeah, what's the change there at Austrade, or no change?
I guess similar to a lot of companies here, we've had to pivot pretty quickly. So we used to do a lot of very traditional business missions. So you take 10 companies from Australia and you go to the UAE for 10 days to look at manufacturing or setting up offices there or whatever it might be. And you do some meetings, it's all in person, and then you come home and it's a nice trip, and that's kind of how it goes. You can't do that during a pandemic, as you pointed out. So it's been a lot of working with partners, I guess, like we're here tonight, working to sort of deliver virtual services. Really, I guess a lot of people are already in market. So if we actually had a company who were trying to close a deal with an insurance partner in a market, they couldn't get into that market because it was closed borders, but they could, I guess, have us there supporting them a little bit more. So that was really helpful. Or helping them look at locations set up in, for example. So there's been, I guess, that sort of leaning on people who are in the market, and also virtual delivery. So all of our services now that used to be in market are now also available virtually or recorded online. I guess similar to you, probably, Greg?
Yeah, we need to do a lot more one-to-many events just because of the scale of new customers coming in, because of the pragmatic things of travel. So a lot more use of digital technologies, but fundamentally, because the mission hasn't changed, it's just where you need to continue, like any agile organisation needs to continue to look and say, well, what do we need to do differently next year in order to go faster, go harder? So COVID's been really good because it's forced this abrupt, I think we've all pivoted so many times. So now it's it's a pirouette.
Do you also find, I was in a conference, APAC conference, pretty much anyone in tech has exploded during the pandemic. Have you noticed that you've got technology in brackets in your role at Austrade? Are you guys being challenged by the rapid growth and going exactly what you just said of, we're not talking about Australia anymore, and New Zealand, even APAC. We've heard Ukraine mentioned more than Southeast Asia tonight.
That's true.
Yeah.
Are you being challenged in that regard? Is that what you're saying as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I advise technology companies. I'm by no means a technology expert. I just want to make sure people know. So we have clients like Zoomer, who you mentioned before, who we've been advising on different markets, for example, helping them do market assessments on where to look at. I guess some of them exploded. So, online delivery has been a big thing. So they've exploded in growth. Companies who are offering solutions around HR or around even to do, I guess, collaboration online really have grown. We also do a lot of things in ag, which has been obviously really strong, clean wine, for example. So it's been quite interesting seeing the different changes, I guess, across industries during the last 18 months. I'm not sure if that's what's happened in that one.
Actually, an interesting observation that I found, and I have to admit, I work a lot closer with the Treasury of New South Wales and West Victoria, and I do work with Austrade, but one thing which they're still grappling with is, historically would have been, hey, come to Sydney, we'll give you some space in the Atlassian building. I know that the Treasury of New South Wales offered an incentive where if you're going to hire 20 people, they'll give you that space for free. Whereas, well, what if we're going to do a remote? What if we just want to come to Australia in general? So it's something more which the states are grappling with, where historically you'd have a hub out of Victoria or out of New South Wales, whereas, well, we're interested in Australia as a whole. We don't necessarily care where it is. So I'd like to know from you, how is Austrade dealing with this?
I guess the good thing about being federal is that we don't favour a child. So we can offer any state. That's okay. I've lived in Melbourne, I lived in Sydney. I love both for different reasons. So
Like Switzerland?
try to be, yeah. But much harder for other states. And I guess it's an interesting one for companies to grapple with. I guess even with investment into Australia, how do you sort of pitch Australia as a whole? You know, given that now it's not like one city particularly over another. So it's really interesting times.
Guys, I know, just in general, tech's obviously adopted this global first workforce and been the first out of the gate with it. But, we've talked about Zuma, it's a bike fleet company. We've talked about Liars, it's a non-alcoholic beverage company. So it sounds to me, and again, question potentially for you and Greg, are you starting to see more companies think more like technology companies now in the way that they're operating? Yeah?
You start with that one.
Show me a manufacturing company that doesn't have fully automated design and production. I'll show you a dead company.
Yeah.
So tech is no longer tech. It's not a thing.
Yeah.
This is one message. Tech is not a thing.
It's a vertical.
Okay, it's everywhere. And when some of us have grandchildren, all they know is this world of tech. Tech is meaningless to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think for all companies, it's this going digital is one of the biggest silly things ever, because that's the website. No, it's the entire infrastructure of your organization to be able to build a single data model that connects to APIs internally to your customers, to your partners, to government and other regulators. So without technology, you will not trade, full stop. There are very, very few companies that can actually survive without the intelligent use of technology. You take any manufacturer, do they need to hire people? I think so. So, yeah.
And to be honest, I would second that in the age of automation. 4 years ago, we said that blockchain would be the most disruptive area of technology, and as much money as you can make in speculating on it, I've actually found that it's artificial intelligence that's changed the world. And when artificial intelligence started becoming embedded in verticals where you never would have thought of technology, in the design of various treatments for illnesses, in biochemistry, in supply chain, in manufacturing, it's created a lot of new jobs. There have been a lot of jobs which have been made redundant, but the fact is, tech is genuinely in everything, and technological advancements such as artificial intelligence are driving the next generation of cutting-edge innovations and outcomes right across the world. And something that if companies aren't doing it, I completely agree with you. I simply don't know how they will exist.
Guys, I think we'll end it there. It sounds like robots are taking our jobs. So, look, to wrap up for the night, thank you everybody for your wisdom and value. Again, it's great to introduce businesses or organisations like Austrade and New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. We're really keen to forge our partnership further with you guys, and Kathleen, I'll definitely make sure all your clients have my number. But yeah, look, I really want to thank everybody that's come here tonight. Tonight was not about Deel. It was really about sharing the journey that we're involved in. We're really involved in helping companies think global with their approach, and we've been fortunate here to be able to support some amazing Australian companies. So thank you for coming tonight and celebrating Deel's official Australian launch party, and we hope to see you all soon.
Yeah.